So I'm really going to jump in quickly because Chip gave such a great, told us all his wonderful credentials this morning, and I know you all want to hear him answering some questions. I do want to say a quick thank you to Elisabeth, NCLR's fiction editor, assistant editor Randall Martosha, founding editor Alex Albright, and UNC Wilmington film professor Chip Hackett for helping me gather some questions, pull some questions together. And I thank also the late Jake Mills, who I was emailing with about this interview over the summer, and he helped me last year to put me in touch with Charles Frazier to invite him here. And thank you, Charles Frazier, for coming to Eastern North Carolina. We're going to start with our theme, with some questions from our theme. You told D.G. Martin on North Carolina Book Watch that you do realize that whether you write one more novel or several more, you're likely to always be known first as the author of Cold Mountain, which I would argue puts you right up there with the authors of To Kill a Mockingbird, Gone with the Wind, and The Sound of the Fury. But turning to our theme this weekend and the motivation behind this theme, recognizing that we are living in a visual culture, one way that we may bring audiences back to the book, as has been said in earlier panels today, is through film adaptations that inspire them to read the novel. How do you feel about readers being introduced to Cold Mountain by way of the film, and that some people, non-readers, may only know the story told in the film? What would these viewers miss that you would be most sorry about?
Well, the thing that movies have a very hard time finding a correspondence for is literary style, the language of a book. That unfolding of ideas and descriptions of characters and the characters' interior lives. That when you read a book, especially a book that goes on for a while, it becomes part of your life for a few days, or I'm not a fast reader, so sometimes a book becomes part of my life for a few weeks. If you're reading War and Peace or something. You miss that, I think. I mean, but movies are not. I don't know. Think about All the Pretty Horses. To me, that book is not the story. That book is that flow of language that just amazes you, sentence by sentence. And then you watch that movie, and it's like the story and the characters is it. There's nothing else there. There's no even an attempt to find an equivalent to Cormac McCarthy's just wonderful, strong, beautiful, terrifying, whatever he's trying to do at the moment, language. So that's one thing I think moviegoers miss. Movies aren't really good at presenting the interior life of people. Movies like to see things and move on. It's much harder to get that interior life, and in a book you can so easily flow in and out of the external and the internal. So those kinds of things that really have to do with the different ways that the two forms tell stories.
In the 2012 NCLR film issue, George Hovis includes 13 Moons in his essay on 10 works of North Carolina literature that should be adapted into movies. I think I read somewhere, or you might mention it this morning, that the movie rights to 13 Moons have been bought. And can you tell us if there's been any progress, and what do you see as the biggest challenges of filming that particular film?
Yeah, it's one of those stories, one of those business stories, really, on 13 Moons. Things were happening and things weren't happening. Scott Rudin, if you'll know who that is, one of the kind of big shot producers, bought it for Paramount. Actually, before the book was ever written. I think I'd written 25 words or less, and they bought it. And then after book came out, things were moving along, and they were talking to screenwriters and producers, and screenwriters and directors. And then Rudin, there was one of those Hollywood deals where he left Paramount for Disney and took his deal to leave was that he got to take some of the books that he had been in charge of buying with him. And 13 Minutes was one of those books. And of course, when he got to Disney, it was like, well, this is the kind of movie we do. So, all the momentum just fell off the cliff. I have no idea if there will ever be a movie or not, but they bought it.
What about the new novel, Nightwoods? Will there be a movie?
I wouldn't mind it if the right thing worked out. It had a couple of good nibbles, but mainly I would love a smaller indie movie set in Western, filmed in Western North Carolina for that. So a couple of producers that I really like working on an arrangement for that.
In Nightwoods, there's a description of a great hole in the ground that's absolutely chilling, visually disturbing. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to read that passage so everybody who hasn't had a chance yet to read Nightwoods. Well, why don't we read the passage first, give Nightwoods, and then I'll ask Chip Hackler's question.
So the main character of this book is a young woman named Luce, who, as the book opens, you don't really know why, but she has isolated herself in this mountain cabin. There's a little sort of resort type town on one side of a long lake, and I don't know if any of you know that part of the state. A little bit like Fontana, a little bit like Nantahala Lake. In an old lodge as the caretaker, and then her murdered sister's two very weird children come to live with her, and they bring a whole range of problems. And they don't talk. They set fire to things. They kill kids. You don't know whether they're autistic. You don't know whether they're just what. You know they've been damaged. You don't know whether that's the extent of the problems. And so Luce decides that if she can help them, it will be by connecting them to the natural world. So she takes them on hikes, nature hikes, history hikes, Cherokee heritage hikes. And she has no idea whether they're even understanding what she's saying, but she's trying. And she gets a little bit lost in the woods one day, and this is what happens. Then down into a wet cove, dense old growth hemlocks. The limbs of the big trees lapped over one another, shutting out the light. All Luce could smell were the astringent needles and wet rot. Dolores and Frank kept marching forward under the trees. The light was filtered and green, and their footsteps fell silent in the dead needles that lay a million years deep. Dodging giant fallen trunks and earth logs, sprouting moss and ferns and new hemlock saplings from their own brown decay. The children kept to the straight line that they walked. They went down slope until the contour of the land leveled into a clearing, but not really a clearing, a blank space in the world. They stopped short at the edge of a drop. As long as she could remember back to the freedom of childhood, Luce had believed that if you walk in the deep woods long enough, you'll inevitably come to places of mystery or spirit or ritual. But she had never found a place like this, and she hadn't expected to feel so scared when she did. It was a perfect round hole down through the earth, a deep cylinder of still air encompassed by dark rock, not a lot farther than you could throw a softball. Far down inside, black liquid lay still as the face of a mirror. The hole was set about with hemlocks, their trunks dark and massive. The children went right to the lip and looked down, and Luce felt scared and reached for them, expecting them to flinch, but they didn't. They let her hold their clammy little hands with crud and greases. Luce walked all the way around the pit's lip looking for a slightly sunken track through a corridor of younger trees. If the place had once been a quarry, wouldn't there be signs of an old road or a rail bed for hauling out the shattered rock? Spalls and shards scattered on the ground, but Luce found no sign of disturbed ground and no obvious break in the circle of tree trunks, so stout that many of them must have begun life back before the flood of white people into the landscape. The rock inside the hole was free of half-round drill marks or raw, gray jags sharp as napped flint from blasting. Nothing but serene, smooth stone with lichen and a few ferns growing in nooks and crannies. Luce let go of Dolores' hand and picked up a rock the size of a grapefruit and lobbed it out into space, and then grabbed back the hand. The rock arced and fell and fell and fell, and then broke the surface of the black liquid with no splash, like there was 40 waiting down there. Luce guessed her rock would keep falling slowly through the thick liquid in total darkness nearly forever. People shoveling wells or outhouse holes or graves when they got past knee-deep joked about digging to China. But however deep the black hole went, Luce figured China wasn't near weird enough to be where it came out. So this whole plays a part throughout the book. Well, here's a bit more after a little bit of a break. Later that night, she's thinking about it. She didn't spend a second wondering what creatures lived down there. One look and she knew nothing lived there. Life would only be in the way. The black hole was before life and beyond life. If you dipped a ladle in that water and drank it, visions would come so dark you wouldn't want to live in the world that contained it. You'd be ready to flee toward the other darkness, summed up in death, which is only distant kin to the black hole of liquid it cuts. A darkness left over from before creation, a remainder of time before light, before these woods and these mountains and the earth and even the sun. There was a black hole filled with black water. The black held no reference to the green world around it. And what did the green world mean if the black was, if forever had been? It was a question Luce could not immediately answer, but she knew the black hole pulled at you. You stand up to it or you go down. If the children found their way back there alone, they would drop themselves into it like stones and fall into the dark. It was altogether their kind of place, and the job that had been put on Luce's shoulders was to keep them from the lip of rock and the face of black water below, upon which God does not move, not even quiver.